Health insurance gone, your jobs are gone. And basically what they're saying in the article, and I'm not going to read this one because they're more important article to read, they're saying that those who have invested in a mutual fund, because of all kinds of illegal dealings and trading, the trading date ends at 4 o'clock. They're still trading after 4 o'clock. They're making all kinds of deals. And they say your mutual funds, which represents 7 trillion. The move by the Comptroller Office, made in cooperation with the Labor Department, opened a new front into the investigation of a $7 trillion mutual fund. They're cleaning the place out. And some of us say, or think, pardon me, in this particular article was from New York Times. No, I didn't put the date. I have to get the date for you. That's one I forgot to put in my clip. I'll get it for you. You see them taking all this money out, it's going overseas. And they're investing in places you will see. That's your pension fund. Now, as we go on, as Professor Allen gave us a good presentation of the Patriot Act in other session, I want to read you an article from the New York Times. The B section. And it says, new light on the FBI fight. And they're dealing with the surveillance of a Puerto Rican group. He's asking for freedom of information. The reason that I use this article is because we want to show you whether this Patriot Act that just passed hasn't always been here. So the Puerto Rican group, this man is asking for Freedom of Information Act, and now it's an article briefly dealing with what happened. In the 1930s and 40s and 50s, an independent movement in Puerto Rico was being surveilled by the FBI. November 1, 1950, Puerto Rican nationalists tried to shoot their way into the Blair House where the president was. We go down to give you the time period. They included the police, the FBI didn't send a directive. They included a 1961 directive from Mr. Hoover to seek information on 12 independent movement leaders, 6 of them operating in New York, concerning their weaknesses and morals, criminal records, spouses, children, family life, educational qualification, personal activities, and other independent activities. The instructions were given under the domestic surveillance program known as COINTEL. So you know, the Patriot Act has always been in place, at least for us. So that's for those people who think that the Patriot Act is something new. And it goes on to give information on what the purpose of it was. It was to do what? To disrupt their activities and compromise their effectiveness. So anything that you do in the community to help yourself, understand there's a mechanism in place that is there to disrupt it. So when your people say, oh, African people, black people, well, they don't get together. You do, but they are constantly destroying it. The existence of the FBI paper come to light during a House Appropriation Committee hearing, and it goes on. So basically what we want to just to illustrate to those who don't understand it, that the government has always surveilled you, and they will continue to surveil you to keep you down. What we're going to do now is we're going to shift to the slides. We want to deal with Iraq and the oil. And in here you have a handout of the Eastern Asia as it relates to the oil in the Caspian Sea. So we're going to go through Iraq and the oil using the slides. And when we finish that briefly, then we're going to go on to globalization. We need the lights out and someone to make the slides. Well, you're going to concentrate on the slides, so I can sit there and do it. So that's not a problem. And what we're going to do is just take a few minutes out, just for some consideration, dealing with the western part of, the eastern part of Asia. And basically, the first slide is a slide of that area, that white rectangular area is called Turkey. And what you see is an illustration of the two large rivers running out of the mountains of Turkey, called the Tigris and Euphrates, that run through Syria and Iraq. Here is a scheme that the United States and Turkey were trying to do to tap water from the Tigris and Euphrates and put it through a tunnel to Israel. So one of the reasons they're in Iraq is for the water. The people, this is just an overview of Turkey and some of the military bases. Here is showing you an oil pipeline. You see this? What happens is they're trying to get the oil out of the so-called Caspian Sea here. The reason in Azerbaijan is that part of what was the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic that the white Russians took over, and there's a vast amount of oil. The oil used to come north to Russia. The United States is trying to get the oil out, but it cannot bring the oil this way, because Azerbaijan, being Muslim, is always fighting with, historically, Armenia, which is Christian. They have to fight. So Azerbaijan said, we're not going to allow the pipeline to run through Azerbaijan down through Turkey. America wants to run the pipeline from Azerbaijan through Georgia, down through Turkey. That's where the pipeline is. We don't have time to discuss it, but that's one of the reasons why Georgia becomes very important to the United States for this pipeline that they're trying to build. Why are they trying to build it in Azerbaijan? Romania is very important to the United States scheme when you look at the Black Sea and how they're going to try to get the oil out. Here is Romania and Turkey and Israel. This is who the United States is trying to work with to secure its position in Asia. Now, in your handout, here's some pipelines. You have a pipeline running from Azerbaijan through this red area called Chechnya and come out. There's a problem that Chechnya has for Russia. To alleviate this problem, Russia is now trying to build an alternate pipeline. Russia is trying to build an alternate pipeline around Azerbaijan. United States, there's a pipeline already running through Georgia, but it belongs to Russia. So the United States is trying to get the oil out of the Caspian Sea, through Georgia, through Turkey. Then this way they can get it out. They also would like to get a pipeline from here. The United States want another one. There's another pipeline coming to Georgia. They want to get the oil out through the Black Sea, through the Straits, but also if they can get it to Romania. The reason they had to take out Milosevic to break down Yugoslavia, Serbia, Albania, they're building a trans-Balkan pipeline. And in order to build a trans-Balkan pipeline, you had to have Yugoslavia broken up. And that's where Albania, Macedonia comes in. So this is their scheme to try to get the oil out. As Professor Allen indicated, oil is critical. Now, here's Turkey again. Turkey is an Islamic state. Turkey wants to join Europe, but the European Union will not let it in. They have let in all of the other white countries, but they view Turkey as an Asian country. They're Muslims. And remember, these white Germans, who you call English, French, and American, they have a scheme. They have white Northern Europeans, blonde, blue-eyed. Then they classify the Europeans as Alpine, the darker one, Hungarian, the Mediterranean, the black ones. So they are not going to let Turkey into. So Turkey has a choice. You're going to try to join with the whites, or you're going to have to eventually come back with your brothers and cousins in Asia. And that's what's going to break the United States there. And this is the Prime Minister. We go on just to deal with the oil. Turkey, to show you the critical nature, we're going to look at Azerbaijan. And the reason this is important is because this Caspian Sea has known deposits of oil, large deposits of oil. And much of it is right here around Azerbaijan. This is one of the main sources of oil that Russia took from these Asian people, piped it up, and made Russia the largest exporter of oil, 12 million barrels a day. When the Soviet Union broke up and became independent, Russia lost control of that. So if you look at the Caspian Sea, you notice there's another number of countries. Russia, Kazakhstan, Iran, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, they all share this. So the United States is trying to get in geopolitically to use its influence to get the oil. Now, the Chinese would like the oil to come their way. The United States wanted the oil to come through Turkmenistan down through Afghanistan. You see this line that exists? There's a gas line existing, an oil line existing. And the quickest way is to produce a new oil line here. But if they produce an oil line here, it would be under the control of Iran. So they figured we can't run it through Iran. They wanted to run around Turkmenistan and Afghanistan. We'll deal with how that fell apart. And then they got all these scenarios here. I mean, when you look at the map and as you understand, as Professor Allen, you will clearly see. And this just illustrates that the Iranians and the Turkmenistan, both being Asian people, have already made a link. And in that link, they produced a gas line. Why? Because when Turkmenistan became independent after the Soviet Union broke up, Turkmenistan could not pump the oil through Russia. Russia put too many conditions, so Turkmenistan had to find an alternate source and outlet for the gas. So they hooked up with their Asian brothers and they brought it through here. When the United States saw that that gas line was built in a barter agreement, $2 billion, Iran built it, and Turkmenistan will trade. When they did that, it alarmed them. And they saw that the Asians were already building pipeline to get it out, and that really pushed them, accelerated their quick effort to get this oil pipeline. Afghanistan, you know where the Americans get their drugs from. As Professor Allen said, some of the opium to China came from India and from Afghanistan. Now, they were trying to pull the pipeline through Turkmenistan, through Afghanistan, and Pakistan, who's allied with them. That's why they had to get rid of the Taliban, because the Taliban got in, however they got in, we don't have the time, and American Colin Powell said, we want to run the pipeline through there. Taliban said, you're not running the pipeline through there, and we're cutting your source of heroin. So they knock them off, okay? And that's why they couldn't run the pipeline. Plus, Pakistan is a little unstable here, because you can't guarantee, if you run a pipeline through here, you see what's happening in Iraq. The Iraqis are blowing up the pipeline. If you can't protect the pipeline in a country with almost 200,000 troops, you know you're not going to be able to protect this long pipeline. So they abandoned that because the Taliban wouldn't cooperate. Here is the line they were trying to pull through, and this part of Afghanistan is flat, this is mountainous. That plan fell apart. The white man think he has all the answers. Here is Chechnya. Chechnya is a group of human beings you might consider white, but they're Muslim. They are different from, in whatever ways they want to call it, from the white Russian. As Professor Allen mentioned about that expansion that the white Russian did to the Asians down here. So this little area called Chechnya, they fight. And what happens is the main pipeline that brought oil from Azerbaijan to Russia to sell comes right through Chechnya. And in the Chechen war, they keep blowing up the pipeline. That's why they have a problem with Chechnya. They made a deal with Chechnya. The Chechnya made a deal. They said to Russians, said, I'll give you some of the money. But Chechnya says no. They don't want it. They want independence. So Russia's trying to rapidly build an alternate pipeline. Here is the Chechnya. The pipeline is coming through Chechnya. They blow it up, and they're trying to do an alternate pipeline. Then here, it just shows you. Now they say, well, Russia can't bring it to Chechnya. So America is trying to work with Azerbaijan, take it to Georgia and down through Turkey. Desperate for the oil. And this is just an overview here. We're going to go back to the articles, and then from there we're going to then deal with globalization. Can we have the lights?
Lights. You said. Lights.
Let's go Okay, let's go. Let's take the lights out again. We're going to go through the slide presentation quickly of Iraq. Now, you see Iraq here, and let's just go over the brief history. Iraq is sending oil to Turkey, it's sending to Syria, and it's sending to Jordan. Okay. Let's see if it's here. I think I missed a point here. Can you? I wanted to illustrate something here. It's an update of your slides, but it's not in the presentation. Talk about free trade. He and South African President Mbeki signed tax agreement and accords on technology and cooperation. So the South Americans are hooking up with Africa. This is the link up that Professor Allen mentioned, that Castro. The reason that they don't like Castro, obviously, is because Castro has the formula. the mindset, the Marcus Garvey, the Malcolm X, and whoever you want to see. How are you going to break these people? That's why they want to crush the revolution, because he's bringing you the formula. So now you see Brazil is hooking up with South Africa. Lula also visited Namibia, as well as former Portuguese colony Angola, Santo Tome, Principe, and Mozambique. We want to develop a strategic policy with the rest of Africa, with China, Russia, India, and Mexico, the link-up as he speaks of. This would guarantee that the developing countries at the World Trade Organization can negotiate equitably markets access for the food. The cooperation agreement in every country he visited and agreed to help build pharmaceutical plants, etc., etc. He goes on to say, Brazilian society was built through the work, sweat, and blood of Africans. This is what you have in your folder. And it's important that we read through the 2-page article. It takes about 5 minutes to do it. And it's very, very important to show you where the African, Asian, South Americans are going. The article is from the New York Times, Friday, November 28, 2003. It's in 2 parts in your folder, and it says, Argentina and Brazil aligned to fight U.S. trade policy. So you hear about how great and powerful. So you already see the link-up that the Africans and Asians are making. And as Professor Allen said, if the United States can't secure the oil, they're in big trouble. Let's face it, you got 200 million cars, trucks, buses. You heat factories. If you don't get the oil, you're gone. The United States can't pay for the oil. It's got to steal it. And let's go on, we're going to read the underlines. Argentina and Brazil fight U.S. trade policy as an illustration of where the shift is coming and the power is coming. It says, Sao Paulo, October 2020. Remember one thing, when Argentina underwent a problem with the IMF and World Bank, the United States did not come to its rescue. Primarily because it didn't have its investments there, and they ripped the Argentinians. So now Argentinians are making the shift here. A left-leaning statement of intent signed in Buenos Aires last week by the president of Argentina and Brazil might have been short on economic specifics, but it did send a clear message. The South American neighbors would resist efforts by the United States to undermine their unity to regional and global trade talks. No longer are you going to stop us from trading with the rest of the world. You're not going to break us. We're going to unify as Castro gave us the blueprint and Professor Allen told you. The joint message will not go unnoticed in Washington, particularly with negotiators of the World Trade Organization in Geneva scrambling to salvage what they can from the wreckage of the recent Cancun summit, and the United States hoping that the meeting next month in Miami will edge the Western Hemisphere closer to agreement on free trade zones stretching from Alaska. What happened was they busted up. The Europeans and Americans got there, thought they were going to dictate, and they found out it doesn't work that way anymore. Using increasing stern language, diplomats from the United States have blamed Brazil for the collapse at Cancun, saying it was too obdurate, and championing the demands of the developing countries for an end to farm subsidies in developing countries. You didn't let us rip you anymore. Since then, the group of 22 developing countries, this is what Professor Allen is telling you that Castro is saying. The 22 developing countries, which is known as the G22, and which includes Brazil, China, India, and South Africa, has shrunk to 12. They go on and they go about the smaller group dropping out. But you see the power base. We go to the second page. Heavy on ideology than policy, the statement promised action to generate jobs, not just profits, and fight for fair, not just free global trade. At the signing, Mr. De Silva, who is from Brazil, brushed off American criticism, saying that the president is merely doing what President Bush does, defending his country's national interest. He says a country of 176 million people cannot be isolated, said Marco Aurelio Garcia, the foreign policy advisor to Mr. De Silva. And if a country has a solid alliance with Argentina, South Africa, and India, even less so. He's talking power. Mr. McCurnis, who has already taken a pugnacious stand against big business, in particular utilities, banks, foreign creditors, and the International Monetary Fund. As Castro said, if you just don't pay them, the ball game is over. Not only are, as we're coming down this article, not only are both governed by left-leaning governments, both are potential agricultural superpowers. Together they produce more soybean this year than the United States.
Wish I could see all Selassie. Maybe my sovereignty will still be mine. If all the gangs in the world unify, we stand a chance against the military tonight.
And have an increasing number of common interests. They are also less dependent on the United States and the Europeans than in the past, now that China is opening its economy and its need for food. Before, Brazil and Argentina had to dance to the tune of the G7 because they were the only markets for their products. But all that is changing, said Walter Milano, a chief Latin American economist at BCP Securities in Greenwich, Connecticut. Now, he says, South America is realizing that their future lies not in the United States, but on the other side of the Pacific where the demand for food. Brazil is fighting for equal market access, and that's a fair right. While they jointly chaired the free trade talks for America, Brazil and the United States have different views on what the free trade zone should be. Faced with Washington's repeated refusal to include, and it goes on. That's what Professor Allen is telling you. It's already here. We're going to read a short article on globalization, then we're going to switch to Africa's link up with Asia. And this you do not have, but it's short. It's from the New York Times, December 16, 2003, and it's titled, A Pact on Central America Trade Zone -1. Now that the United States couldn't get what it wanted in Cancun, basically in Cancun, what the United States wants is everybody to open up their markets, and America doesn't open. And they were arguing over foreign subsidies because food is the most, agricultural products, things from plants, are the most important trade item in the world. Almost everything traded in the world is some kind of food, some kind of something that comes from a plant. That's why foreign subsidies are critical. So the United States wants you to drop your tariffs so they can push everything in, but you can't do it back to them. So here's a pact. Now they're trying, they couldn't get past Brazil, Argentina, Venezuela, the big ones said no to the United States. The United States can't do anything. So now they're going to work on the little ones. The United States sold its first new trade agreement in a year marked by reversal setback, completing negotiation on Wednesday with 4 Central American countries in the regional free trade group. But it fell short of the globe. Who did they get? El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. Little ones. Costa Rica did not sign. El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua saying that they had the courage to agree to open their economies further to United States service and goods with a gun to your head. Still the agreement. It's hard, you know, you don't want to see your brains blown out. Since the agreement that is but a fraction of the bushel. The agenda has faltered on several fronts this year. Global trade talks collapsed in Cancun, Mexico. In September, bilateral talks for trade agreement with Morocco and Australia have been delayed. So they can't even get an agreement, they can't even force Australia, and Morocco said no to the United States. Trade agreement with Morocco and Australia has been delayed, and the agenda for a free trade agreement for the Western Hemisphere had to be watered down to avoid a debacle. Free trade advocates said that the disappointment reflects deepening concern in the United States and around the world about the direction of the liberalization and the questioning about its benefits. They don't give the same level of propriety to human capital, immigration and labor rights, as they do to inanimate issues like property rights, goods and services, as Professor Allen said. They want to rip you for what they can get. The rest of the world said, no, this shouldn't work like this. In the United States, some lawmakers and others are gaining traction in their complaint that the free trade agreement had helped propel the country's growing trade deficit, which now stands at $500 billion, and contributed to the loss of 3 million manufacturing jobs. So who's benefiting is a handful of corporations at everybody's expense. Now the rest of the world is telling you it's no good. We continue on the second page as we read down just with the underline. 2 free trade agreements begun by President Clinton, and one with Chile and one with Singapore, but it had won little support, On the global stage, World Trade Organization in Cancun broke down with a group of 20 developing countries, challenged the contention that the United States and Europe, that current trade rules are effective in fighting against poverty in the world. The United States insisted that the Central American countries open to their protected service areas and agricultural markets, but you can't break into ours. But at the same time, the United States is resisting a full opening of its border to sensitive agricultural products. But before they could just do what they want, but the world has changed. As the Brazilians and Argentinians just told you. Said, we're going to Africa and Asia, we don't need you. The talks over a free trade agreement with Australia had to be extended in part because the Australian government bought at demands by the United States officials to water down their system under which Australian government would notify. By limiting the ability of they fight with Australia over generic drugs. By limiting the ability of generic pharmaceutical companies to compete, it will mean that the people lose their leverage on genetics. So in other words, you want to make a drug for AIDS. The United States says, I have this proprietary right to make drugs for AIDS. Right. But there are a lot of different alternate pathways to make the drug. Say there are 5 ways to make it. You have way 1. We're going to use the other 4 ways that you can't claim as patent. They're trying to block you on all ways. Now we're going to go to what's in your handout. As we're dealing with, we go into the African-Asian connection. And from there, then we're going to go into China and Asia as we finish out. And this is from the Daily Challenge, Monday, September 29, 2003. It shows an African and what is to be an Asian. And it said Japanese PM, that's Prime Minister, meets African leaders. And it reads, again for the individuals for the tape. Japanese Prime Minister Junichiro Koizumi. You know what's funny? There's I was just reading, there is an African from Gabon that's opened a shop in Harlem on 7th Avenue, 137th Street. The name of this Ujama. And he says that he has a lot of visitors from Japan because they think Ujama, he's Japanese. But if he goes back to the history and find out where most of those Japanese names come from West Africa,
thank you.
He's shocked just like the Ainu. Okay. The Japanese Prime Minister Junichiro Koizumi met African leaders in a run-up to, and this is happening in Tokyo, in a run-up to an international conference on the continent's development, because they need your resources, where Tokyo has set a pledge to $1 billion in grant. With bilateral meetings taking place one after another at the Tokyo Hotel, Koizumi was meeting with leaders from 19 African nations on Sunday. Here you think everything is CNN, that nonsense they put on the TV. The host country of the conference planned to commit $1 billion in grants towards African nations in 5 years. That's contrast the United States giving Africa $800 million for 54 countries. And they give Israel what, about 20 billion? What's the name? Egypt gets about 4? Yeah. Turkey gets about 7 or 8, whatever it is, and you know. So this is nothing. Asian African, this is the framework to promote Asian African cooperation, although Japan does not have a historical and geographical relation with Africans. He don't know his history, because we were there. Yes. Unlike countries like France and Britain, and one day we were presented, you see the Ainu, and then you see all the Buddhists, etc. The history and culture is there. Koizumi is to announce the aid formally in a keynote speech Monday at the opening of a 3-day Third Tokyo International Conference on African Development. The grants are expected to be spent on health, etc. The African nations, African nation added Japan's total aid to Africa for 5 years will be increased. Here's the key point too. Representatives of nearly 50 African nations, including 23 heads of states or governments, are due to attend a meeting to address the continent's pressing demands and examine ways to help us peace and economic prosperity. The participants in the meeting will number about 90, including donor countries. This meeting has been held every 5 years under Japanese initiative, which first conference in 1993 attended by only 5 African leaders. They're all there now. And Japan said, look, we'll work with you, no condition put on you. This meeting in 1998, participants had expanded to 14 African leaders and go on. Then we're going to go on to our leader. When anybody tell you you have leaders, you have African, Asian, Pacific leaders. men and women, if you don't want to take the people in here, in this country, who they call leaders, like the Congressional Black Caucus, who won't even go over to the African Union. Let's go on with Mugabe. And he stopped over at Addis Ababa, and he's talking. Mugabe hails China. And this is from the Daily Challenge, December 16, 2003. Mugabe hails China. Mugabe says, as they indicate here, Addis Ababa, Zimbabwe's President Robert Mugabe urged Africa on Monday to forge closer ties with China and other Asian countries and shun the brutal predominance of the United States. Mugabe, who stormed out of the Commonwealth earlier this month, was speaking at the China-African Forum in Addis Ababa. That's why when Bush went over, he was trying to upstage the African Union meeting and to pull X amount of African leaders away from the meeting and upstage it. But it's not going to, it didn't work. The Africans know what they have to do. Speaking at the China-African Forum in Addis Ababa, where Chinese Prime Minister Wei Jianbao promised to increase aid to this continent. They say the world's poorest continent. I don't know who wrote the world's poorest, because that person obviously doesn't understand what's important. Now, the point is that things are happening all over the world. That's why when we, as African Help and African Other Help of the Sino-Africa and others, apply for membership application to the African Union, and hopefully you will do so if you don't have it. It's critically important to get over there and see what they're doing. They want to link up. It has taken far too long for most of the business people to realize that the biggest world market, the fastest growing economies are in fact the East, China being the largest. Mugabe said, hitting out at the Western nations, he said, were latecomers to the human cradle civilization is African China. No, you got to tell him where it's at. He slammed the brutal predominance of the American, unconditionally supported by Britain and Australia and the nations of Europe. It's a race issue here, besides trying to rip you off. Mugabe withdrew from the Commonwealth this month, as the rest of them they voted him out. At the forum, China win. You didn't know the Prime Minister of China was going to Africa. He only comes to the United States. China Win said that the country would increase capital investment to the Chinese human resources. China's developing. It's going to need natural resources if it's going to continue its development. That's our opportunity to now make the agreement. Resources for technology and trade. He said China's own development problem limited what it could offer, but that there would be political consideration. There would be no political conditions. We work with you. We know you started the world's history. We know you have the natural resources. We know that you come in. China and Africa together have more than 1/3 of the world's population. He said China is the largest developing country and Africa is the largest developing continent. The next article shows here is a handout from the New York Times, and it's dealing with, it's time for serious talk about the dollar. The purpose of the article is to show you that in 1999, 2002, there was approximately $300 billion worth of foreign investment in the United States. 1990, there was approximately 2,000. What I'm looking at. In the year 2000, this high graph said there were $300 billion worth of foreign investment into the United States. In the year 2002, it dropped to under 50. The money's not coming in to support this country anymore. That's how, like you live off your credit card, that's how the United States live off in front of this deficit we're going to. The next one you have on your sheet, it's a handout. It says Asia worries about the growth of China's economic power, and most important is this graph here to show you where this investment coming. Where is the money they're stealing from your pension, your mutual funds? Where's a lot of it going? Right into China. And you see that big jump? The money's coming into China. Very little is going to Japan, Malaysia, and Singapore. We move on to a small article which you do not have. Now we're dealing with where is China going and how you hooking up, because you know you're hooking up. And you do not have this. In New York Times, December 14, 2003, it says, has irrational exuberance hit China? See, the Asians are about 40 to 50 years ahead of us in certain development. But we're going to rapidly get there. Just like Japan, for whatever the reason, small island with no resources, it came to be the second largest industrial power. For whatever the reason. So we know it can be done. It says here, power plants in China. The reason we're dealing with China is so that China is the powerhouse of Asia. And you see the link up is coming. Power plants in China cannot keep up with electrical demand. And so many steel mills are being built that all the world's iron ore together may not be able to supply them adequately. And remember, Africa's 4 times bigger than China. So whatever you see in here, you could double and triple it when we get rolling good. That's because they're doing everything to slow you down. But it's not going to work. China was not yet ready to let its currency, the yuan, rise against the dollar in foreign exchange. The United States wanted the yuan to strengthen so that they could sell their goods more easily here and the Chinese good would be cheaper here to help with the trade balance. So Bush asked the Prime Minister of China, come on, help us out. China was not yet ready to let its currency, the yuan, rise against the dollar in foreign exchange. Economists said that this means that speculation and foreign investments are likely to continue to pour into China. China's economy is growing at 10%. The official new Chinese agency said Wednesday that electricity consumption leaped 15% in the first 9 months as factories opened and people brought more appliances. As we finish down, the Chinese steel output is already up 15% this year to an estimated 210 million tons, making China the world's largest steel producer and leaving shipping lines in iron ore worldwide working day and night. But Chinese provinces are already erecting additional steel mills with combined annual capacity of 120 million per ton. Even if iron can be found for these mills, China may have difficulty finding foreign markets for the steel. That's what makes Africa so important in terms of the raw material for you to exchange to get your technology. The common denominator in many of the Chinese economic problem is they say the Chinese have dysfunctional banking system because they lend to their friends. But at least they don't clean it out. Another article of which you do not have as we rapidly bring it to a close, it's called The U.S. and China Test Bounds on Trade. The U.S. and China Test Bounds on Trade. New York Times, Friday, November 28, 2003. We're just going to read from the underline. We pretty much timed it. It takes about 4 or 5 minutes. And it says here, just a little hearing what the white man is talking about. Goldman Sachs, in the new paper, forecast that China's economic output will surpass America's within 4 decades. So they give China 40 years. At the rate they're going, you don't have 40 years. David Cunningham Jr., the president of Asian Pacific operation of the FedEx Corporation, said trade disputes are going to will be an ongoing issue for the next 20 years. An article we were dealing with, they said there's a port structure at the Pearl River, that's the southeast portion of China. They said the Pearl River, one of China's main ports, services more container ships than all of the container ships in the United States for a year. So if you take container ship as one indication, and steel and this, you don't have 40 years. At the rate they're stealing the money, you don't have it. It is very dangerous that the United States has been seen by Chinese, and then it goes on. The United States is not alone in becoming alarmed at China's export prowess. Japan and the European Union are also engaged in a series of trade disputes with Beijing. We will present at another time. Half of Taiwan's industry is in China. About a third of many of Japan's industry is in China. So the Asians have already hooked. And the Taiwanese said there will be no unification by force. They will be fully economically integrated within 10 years. China's reliance on joint ventures by state-owned enterprises with multilateral companies seem to have moderated the action. So what are they talking about multilateral countries? All your companies are over there. One of our friends from South Africa who visited, she said they're all there. They're telling you. They're there. While some corporations like Chrysler and Ford are willing to rally opposition to imports from Japan in 1980 using their formidable lobby and union, most big companies today are already in China and are reluctant to insult its leaders or endanger their holding in the fast-growing market. They forgot about you already. China represents a much greater challenge to the global economy and how to bring prosperity to 1.3 billion people. Nobody's talking about bringing prosperity to Africans. And it goes on. But for now, most executives are assuming that China will keep on growing. They've become the manufacturing center of the world. 40 years? Said Daniel Lascella, the chairman and chief executive of Novartis, the pharmaceutical giant that is Switzerland's biggest. It's amazing, and I'm not sure if the United States and other countries will one day end up regretting it. When the Chinese
yes, I. Yep. Knick-knack, paddywhack, Hebrew cows back. When I grab the microphone, we can see get brat. You shine, I'ma dim that. Spitting all that weak rap. My words is like a big gat. I'm working with the kickback. Aiming where you lit at. Warlord, swing a heavy sword. Take heads off in the name of our Lord. It's a massacre in the name of all that's holy. I promise this Babylon system can't contain the homie. Burn fire. In the face of all them liars, if you the most high, Rastafari the most higher, check your doctrine. I blaze the Aishas and enter in, kneel before the altar and confess each and every sin. Turn toward Jah and repent from your evil ways. Separate from heathen living in these very last days. Plagues and famine, crooked cops committing murder. It's GMOs in your McDonald's hamburger. What you doing? The temple become ruined, and the glory that you're pursuing will eventually do you, and that's fact. And there ain't no coming back. Liberty off track. Pick it up, put it back. You can do it. Yeshua already proved it. Keep Jah in your heart, and you will get through it. Mountains moving, seas parting, clear the way. The line of the tribe of Judah shout, break every chain, hail the King. House Selassie, I and I, Lord and Savior, needless to guess Rastafari. Provide the righteous teachings for the whole church body. Yeah.